I was the strongest man on the planet and I felt it.
World's strongest man, Eddie Hall, reveals how he pushed his body to the limits and nearly died.
I was convulsing, so it was like in and out of consciousness. Blood was just fucking everywhere. And then backstage just suffered the consequences, and they were bad.
What's the hardest thing you've ever had to overcome in your life?
The boxing fight with Thor. Sort of 18 months into the prep, I detached my left bicep. You know, I had to sort of convince myself it was okay that I'm going to beat this guy with one arm.
Eddie reveals his feud and the betrayal of Thor.
Would you say you hate him?
I can't see myself being friends with someone who tried to destroy my life. And that put a lot of like black cloud on me, a lot of depression, and wanted to kill myself.
The Rock is on steroids. What are your thoughts on that?
I would believe that The Rock would be on testosterone replacement therapy.
Does the world need more strong men?
There's a lot of toxicity.
What's the most amount of food you've eaten in a day?
I did a 20,000 calorie day once. Spent the whole night shitting myself, throwing up.
What does it cost a year to be a world strong man?
You've got to spend about £800 a week.
Eddie was one of my top dream guests to get on the show. If you'd like me to get your dream guest on this show, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel and turn the notification bell on.
Eddie, what would you say is stronger in you, your mental strength or your physical strength?
Oh, it's a hard question. I would say my mental strength is probably more of as a part of what I am than my physical. I think, you know, in terms of strength, there are people out there that are as strong and, you know, willing to put the bodies on the line, but mentally, I think it's that's where I've got the game changer. It's being able to swim out to those dark waters, and whilst everyone else is swimming back, you keep going, and that's what separates me from the rest, I believe.
Why do you do that? Why do you push yourself to such limits? Like, we had COVID, we could all just relax a bit.
Yeah.
Is it a bit sadistic to do that?
It is a little bit, yeah. I think a lot of it stems with filling a void. I think, you know, I've suffered with mental health, anxiety and depression through a lot of my life. And filling that void for me is going to the gym and venting and getting that aggression out and walking out with those endorphins and that feel-good factor. And I think that is addictive in a way. You know, you thrive to have that feeling all the time, so you ought to keep going back and wanting that feeling. And I suppose for me, it's sort of like, if I'm not doing something, if I'm not like got a target, a goal, eye on the ball, so to say, that's when I start to really fall down the rabbit hole, the dark, deep, horrible hole, and feel bad. So chasing something and pushing the limits is my void filler, and it becomes an obsession. And I suppose that's in a way, mental health has been a massive hindrance in the life, but it's also been a massive blessing and gift in certain ways, because it's pushed me to take my body to the limits and push more than what people deem possible in life. So,
what is that void?
I suppose the void for me, I mean, when I was a kid, I undiagnosed, suffered with ADHD and God knows what else. So very energetic, very bouncing off the walls. And I was a very high level swimmer. And they say now I'm like, my sons have grown up and I've got kids of my own, and my son's got ADHD. And they say the best cure for it is sport. Release that energy, release those endorphins, then they'll work harder, they'll sleep better, they'll build their lives quicker. So I guess unbeknown to me, I was filling that void when I was a little boy. You know, I was a national champion swimmer. And then I suppose fast forward to about 13, 14, the swimming scene sort of stopped, you know. Like dropped out the club, chucked off the GB squad, that kind of thing. And the anxiety and depression and all the sort of side effects of ADHD began to really creep in. And that's when I really started to struggle. You know, really, really bad anxiety, really bad depression, wanting to kill myself. Not really sure. And at that age, you know, that time, no one knew what that kind of thing was. You know, it was just swept under the carpet. Like, oh, you're feeling down. Oh, here's a lollipop. You know, sort yourself out. So, and then it was only when I started going to the gym again when I was about 14 that started to disappear again. And that made me realize that, well, now as an adult looking back, it made me realize that that is my void, is not keeping active, not having a goal, not having something to chase. And that's when I sort of, you know, dive down the rabbit hole and sort of think everyone's against me and think the world's horrible and it's not worth living. So I suppose that is the void.
And do you know why you felt like that? Did you ever get your head around it?
I don't know why I felt like that. It was more, I mean, there's so much research on it nowadays. They put it down to, you know, chemical imbalances, hormone imbalances. You know, no one's really got an answer.
No, I think they're just trying to disprove the chemical imbalances thing now.
Yeah. I mean, you know, no one can put a sort of pin in it and say that's the reason why you know, have these problems. For me now as an adult, and I say I've done a lot of research on the ADHD, I feel like it was that really, unbeknown to myself, unbeknown to my family. I had a really bad sort of case of ADHD, and when I stopped doing sport and stopped being active, the side effects and the problems caved in.
And what are those side effects?
Anxiety. You know, you've got this rush of energy all the time. Your brain's bouncing off the walls. You know, I mean, if I speak to my parents, they'll say the same. I was just constantly moving, but jumping on the spot. You know, I couldn't sit and watch TV. I'd just be bouncing and bouncing.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, it destroys your central nervous system, and that's what gives you anxiety. And
right.
Then in turn of that, when you get anxiety, when you're having these feelings and you get the cramps in your stomach and the lump in the back of your throat, and you don't know what it is. And I suppose that's when the thoughts creep in of, right, like something's wrong with me. And then you start to think, you know, am I going to die? And then more thoughts creep in and you think, is it worth living? Is it worth doing this? Is it worth doing that? So I think they have a knock-on effect to each other quite badly. And that's what I believe that ADHD can do to a person. If left undiagnosed, it can really mess with them.
Did you ever have to take medication?
Other than when I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression, I was prescribed Prozacs when I was 13.
Wow.
Other than that, no, I've never had anything for my ADHD. As I say, I think I was quite lucky in a way of I found sport as a boy, and I found, you know, lifting weights and bodybuilding, so to say, and powerlifting in my adulthood.
Yeah.
And I've just been quite lucky of sort of kept to those side effects at bay. And it isn't until I'm like, as I say, it's not until I've had my own son and he's got the same that I've sort of understood it and gone, right, you know, I can look back to my childhood and go, that's what it was.
So, you know, like when you watch, I don't know, Marvel or superhero movies and you've got these superheroes and they've got this one big weakness and flaw, none of them are perfect.
Yeah.
I sort of feel a bit like that with you, whereby, I mean, if you took away the ADHD and the anxiety, would you have even bothered going down the gym? Would you want to drive yourself to the dark places to be the strongest man in the world and lift the biggest deadlift ever? Would you have even done any of that?
Your gut feeling says no.
Yeah. You might have been an accountant or something.
Yeah. You know, I worked as a truck mechanic from age 16 up until I was like 26. I worked as a doorman as well during that time. And I always think to myself, even now, you know, what if I hadn't have found the gym? What if I hadn't have done my swimming? Where would I be? And the chances are I'd still be stuck in, you know, that 9-to-5 job, which I hate. You know, I find, you know, that was when I was at my most unhappiest, when I was working 10, 12 hours a day every day and working, you know, shifts on the doors at night. That's when I was my most unhappiest.
Right. Yeah, so I always try and have some positive messages on the show and some crazy stuff as well, but is that a great message that we could put out there more for all the people that are struggling, that are maybe struggling with their mental health, their anxiety, ADHD, bit lost, odd one out, disruptor, rebel? Actually, that could be the driver that makes them really successful.
I believe so. Yeah. I think there's a lot of problems out there, and people have got a lot of mental health issues, anxiety and depression and ADHD and autism and all sorts of things. And I believe that there isn't a cure. I'll say that up straight. There isn't a cure, but I believe there is a way of dealing with it, and almost like a fix on a daily basis. Now, my fix was swimming. My fix was bodybuilding. My fix was strongman. I'm not saying that's going to be your fix or anyone else's fix, but I think it's important to say that there is more than likely going to be a fix for your mental health issues or your ADHD. It might be going for a coffee with a friend. It might be going for a walk with your dog. It might be drag racing. Don't really know. But what I'm saying is, like, that's what I always say to people in these situations, is try and find your fix. Find something that not cures, but something that sort of battles those symptoms on a daily basis, and makes things manageable. Cheapest I could find for a hyperbaric chamber was £100,000. I built my own. Cost me about $3,000. It was very, very dangerous. I remember I did it, and to test it, I put my rabbit in it at the time, and I thought if the rabbit survives, then I'll be okay. So the rabbit survived, an hour in there.
Was it easy for you to find yours? It sounded like you fell into it quite early, because I imagine some people listening, they're in their 40s and they still haven't found it.
Yeah. I mean, as you say, I was quite lucky. My mum was a swimming teacher, and my elder brothers swam. So I was almost forced. You know, I didn't have an option. They all went to the swimming club, and I was like, well, you can't stay at home, Eddie, you have to come along. So I was, forced into the swimming training. And I think because I felt so good after each session, that's why I then wanted to go back. No one then forced me to.
Yeah.
Every time I went, I felt good about myself. I'd come back and I'd be, just like this huge, I mean, as a kid, to have that feeling of euphoria and self-worth when you're coming back from a training session makes you want to go again and again. And the same with the lifting weights. I almost fell into that in a way. It was almost like an accident when I my mum and dad sort of sat me down one day and were like, you can't stay at home from school all day because I was expelled. You've got to go to the gym. You've got to do something with your life. What do you want to do? And I said, well, I'll go to the gym then. All my mates were at the school studying for the GCSEs. And I was going to the gym and doing, deadlifts, biceps, triceps. And that's where the journey began. And again, that's when I started to feel better. So I almost fell into that as well. It was sort of like both almost accidental, but worked quite well.
What did you get expelled for?
I don't think I can quite say. But,
give us a clue. I didn't realise it was such a...
Well, I mean, I got suspended several, probably 100 times, and then eventually expelled. And most of the time, it was either to do with my fists or my dick, one or the other. One or the other. It was never anything else. It was it was one or the other.
All right, then we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
This show is called Disruptors. Did you disrupt World's Strongest Man?
Did I disrupt?
Disrupt it.
Disrupt
yeah.
it.
I mean, you were the first British winner for quite a while, were you?
Yeah. I was, I think, 24 years since the last.
I used to watch it back in the day, back in the Jeff Capes day, and watched you win it.
Yeah.
Did you do something different? How did you win World's Strongest Man? What advantage did you have?
Well, I believe that I brought a different angle to strongman, and that is the world of recovery and investing in your body. I think that I trained hard and I ate hard, but I believe that there were people that trained harder and ate better than me.
Right.
But where they wouldn't put the money and the work in was the recovery. And that's something I feel I really brought to the table of, the thought for most strongmen out there. I mean, it's a tough sport and it's an expensive sport. It costs a lot of money to feed yourself, to go to gyms and, fuel and traveling to different competitions every other weekend. It's expensive. So when you're talking about, you know, spending money on your body in terms of physiotherapy and cryotherapy and hyperbaric chambers, you know, the thought of spending 40 to 60 pounds a week on physiotherapy, most strong men would be like, fucking hell, I can't afford that. And I was of the opinion it was the most important thing. Like, if you're going to spend £300 a week on food and, you know, gym memberships and whatever else, then why aren't you putting the same into your recovery? And that's where I really excelled. You know, I was doing £300 a week in food.
And when was this?
This was like in my prime. Like,
Yeah.
You know, 2015 to 2017. So I quit my job in 2014, and that's when I became professional.
So I mean, that 300 quid a week with inflation would be 450 quid a week
I
now.
would probably, probably would be,
So that just on food?
Just on food. And then I was doing a minimum of 5 physio sessions a week at £40 a pop. So I mean, what's that? That's 200, is it?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. £200 a week just on physiotherapy. Sometimes more, because sometimes I'd have to go for, you know, shockwave treatment and other cryotherapy treatment or whatever. So you're probably talking £250 a week on physiotherapy.
What about all your proteins and supplements?
Just about to say, and then you've got all the supplements. You know, it's expensive, man.
I was saying this to Harry in the car. I wanted to ask you, what does it cost a year to be a world strong man? You know, when you add it all up.
Well, I worked it out. I remember I worked it out with the food, the memberships, the traveling, the physio, the hot and cold, all that kind of thing. I worked it out as you've got to spend about £800 a week just on you. So that's not paying the mortgage. That's not feeding the wife and kids. That's £800 a week just on you.
So that's £3,500 a month. But if you're earning net, that's £7,000 a month, because you've got to pay your £50 in, you know, your 50% in tax. 85 grand a year.
Best part of.
Wow. Gross. Yeah.
I would say, I mean, back then I was probably only earning 30 to 35 grand a year in my day job. And then I was having to moonlight, you know, working the doors to, you know, top that up and actually afford it. And then of course you've got sponsors, you know, you've got people that pay bits of cash and help out as well. So it all adds up, but there was at no point where it was like I could take my foot off the gas and have a week off, because if you have a week off, all that money, you're just back in deficit again, you know, and then you owe people, and it's that just adds to the stress. So yeah, it's an expensive sport.
Yeah.
But invest in yourself, you know, the £250.
So that's how you saw it, as an investment, not an expense.
I saw it as an investment. Yeah. Hyperbaric chamber. Now, at the time, the cheapest I could find for a hyperbaric chamber was £100,000.
That's more than your tank.
To buy one, yeah. To buy one. So, what I did is, this is probably one of the most proudest things, but also probably one of the most stupid. I built my own. I went to an engineer, and we got a massive steel tube. And we put ends on it, and we put all the gas fittings in, and we got all the oxygen tanks and got the compressors, and I made my own hyperbaric chamber. It cost me about £3,000, but I made my own. And
it worked fine.
And it worked fine. It was very, very dangerous. I remember I did it, and to test it, because I didn't want to go in and test it myself, I put my rabbit in it at the time. And I thought if the rabbit survives, then I'll be okay. So the rabbit survived an hour in there. So the rabbit,
I bet you wouldn't put Wolf in it, would you? You wouldn't put your dog in it. No.
So the rabbit survived an hour. So I got out and I was like, right, safe. So I went in, and that's how I tested it. So.
Oh man, that is random. And that's the advantage you thought you had in World's Strongest Man, because you could recover better, you could train harder, and you would be stronger at the events.
Yeah, basically, I believe that, as I say, I believe that everyone was probably training as hard as me. Everyone was eating as well as me. But I was like, how can I get one up on these other guys? How can I step it up? So I thought it's got to be the recovery.
Yeah.
It's got to be, you know, what are the other guys not willing to do? What are they not willing to spend?
Yeah.
And that's where I thought, right, I can get everyone a one up here. The hyperbaric chamber, for instance. I was talking to a professor in the US who sort of did a lot of research with this. He put his athletes in it. He's in university studies, and he reckoned that 1 hour in the hyperbaric chamber was the same as having 12 hours outside. So it speeds up the recovery process times 12. So if I'm having an hour in that chamber every day, I'm getting another 3.5 days recovery every week over any other athlete. And if you put that, like you add that up over a year, I mean, that's another 150 days a year extra recovery I'm getting on any other athlete. So that's where I got the competitive edge, was that I was willing to take loans out, you know, remortgage my house to buy these things.
Yeah, could you feel it in your body and in your mind, the speed of the recovery? Because I know that's only something that's come out fairly recently in training, that the recovery is as important as the training.
Yeah. I believe that, you know, everything I was doing the physio. I was doing an hour and a half of physio most days. I was doing the hot and cold treatment every single day.
That's big now, but yeah.
So I was doing an hour in a sauna, an hour in a sauna, sort of 5 minutes in a cold bath, really, really hard sort of hot cold treatment. I was doing the hyperbaric treatment every single day. And then I was doing stuff like the cryotherapy, where you go in a machine and you freeze yourself. And then, you know, shockwave therapy. There's just endless, I could go on forever about stuff that costs a lot of money that people weren't willing to do, and I was. And I think, I believe that's what separated me from the rest. I mean, I'm not the most genetically gifted man on the planet. You know, I'm not a giant. I'm 6'2.5". I'm, you know, from a normal sized family. No one's a freak, you know, and I believe that I was just able to push the boundaries and put that extra work in and put that extra investment in terms of recovery to get up to the level of the giants and surpass them. And I believe that's where I came, you know, separated myself from the rest, was being clever. So not a lot of people know this. Before I did the 500 kilo deadlift, I did a trigger point with the hypnotherapist, or a pincher point in the back of my hand, and something that would trigger a massive rush of adrenaline. And then when I got my hands on the bar and I closed my eyes, that's when my mind just went into a different dimension almost. And then I stand up and then I sort of finish the lift and it's like, ding.
So when you were halfway through your world record deadlift and your nose started to bleed, can you remember that moment and how you felt?
Yeah, so, I mean, the half-ton deadlift, so regardless what people think, I never lifted above 460 kilos before that day. Never. So...
Is it true you did the 2 lifts that day, or really close?
Yeah. So the most I ever lifted in the gym was 450. The most I'd ever lifted in the competition was 460. So I was coming into that competition that day, and I claimed that I was going to beat the world record by 37 kilo in one day, which was obscene. It was obscene. You know, it had been broken by 1 kilo a year every year for 20 years, you know. So for me to add 37 kilo on in one day was just like, it was deemed impossible by so many people.
Yeah.
So I suppose when I lifted it and it started to, you know, as soon as I got past my knees and I'm at the halfway point, I guess it was just that not a feeling of like, fuck you to everyone, but like a feeling of like, there you go. You know, if you really want something, if you put your heart and soul into something in life, you can achieve it. And it was just such a satisfying moment. The last few inches of the deadlift, I was just looking.
You were just showing it.
Just looking at the crowd, just like so pleased with myself.
Yeah.
Because there was so much negativity. There was so many people saying it was impossible. You know, the promoters of strongman said it was impossible. The other strongman said it was impossible. I was very vocal on social media, and I'd say 99% of the fans said it was impossible. So I was just fighting this brick wall of negativity. Just like, it's not going to happen. You're an idiot. You're a dick. You're deluded. Blah 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 blah. So that was a nice moment for me to prove all those people wrong and pull that 500 kilo deadlift.
And was that the motivation then? Did it become about proving people wrong?
It was a big part of it. I'll be honest. You know, if someone says you can't do something, I'm going to try my hardest to prove those people wrong. And it's It is. It does light a little fire in your belly, you know. And I think every single comment, every single like negative word and passing comment, whatever you see, it's just throwing a piece of coal on.
Yeah.
And that's how I saw it. Every time I'd see something, I'd just get more riled up. Like, right, it would make me genuinely train harder.
Yeah.
And focus more and eat better and recover better. You know, it really did focus me in.
How did you prepare your mind to go in that day knowing that you've nowhere near lifted this before and not let the doubts creep in?
Yeah.
I mean, did you know that day you were going to do it? Or was there any doubts?
Of course there's doubts, but I just joked myself that much. I kidded myself that much that I had to believe it, you know? I said the most I ever lifted in the gym was 450. And any time I went above that, my head would fall off.
What does head fall off mean?
Like, I'd lose faith before I'd even try to lift it.
I see, yeah.
You know, and then I'd go to lift it and I'd break the ground and fail and I think it's because my mind just wasn't there. My mind kept telling me this was impossible. And I had to do a load of research. I spoke to a lot of universities, a lot of scientists, blood doctors, everything else. Bear in mind I had a year to prep, and it was a scientist that broke it down for me. He's like, Luke, he's like, you aren't going to lift this. It's like the only way the human body can lift this kind of weight is if you trigger the fight or flight scenario. And it's been proven of like people have car accidents and mothers lift, you know, cars off of the kids.
Wow.
And fathers have like done amazing things to protect the children.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's the instant he gave to me. He's like, you've got to put yourself in this kind of scenario. You've got to release that massive dump of adrenaline to get access to all your muscle fibers. And what really like made me understand it was, he said a day-to-day person, someone who takes the kids to school, goes to work, does a bit of shopping, picks the kids up and goes home, you know, and watches TV all night. That person's probably got access to 50, 60% of the muscle fibers at most. Someone who's more in tune with the body, like an athlete who's using the body every day, coordination, you know, activating those muscle fibers, they've probably got access to about 70, 75% of the muscle fibers at most. But a mother who's been in a car crash and the kids are trapped under a car, that massive dump of adrenaline, they've got access to 100% of the muscle fibers, and they can outstrength like a strong man who's only got 50%. And that's when that was like a flick switch moment for me. I was like, wow, okay. So I've got to go to a dark place. And then I recruited a hypnotherapist who we did a lot of work together, a lot of sitting down and just talking about scenarios and ways to approach the lift and what sort of mind frame to have. And we got to a point where we discussed a scenario, a very horrible, very, very horrible scenario involving my kids, and something that would trigger a massive rush of adrenaline.
Can you share that?
No,
No.
I can't. We're
Fair
not
enough.
without getting upset.
Yeah.
And so what we had to do was, just before like I do this lift, I'm sort of just, so not a lot of people know this, before I did the 500 kilo deadlift, I'd locked myself in a disabled toilet for about 20 minutes. And I just had two pals in there with me, just talking, just bigging each other up, just fucking like, you're gonna do this. It's like, you know, to the point where, and then I did a trigger point with the hypnotherapist, or a pincher point in the back of my hand, and that brings all those feelings and emotions, rushed to my head. And I remember I didn't open the door, I kicked the door open from this disabled toilet. And I just walked out, got my suit on, and just walked up and lifted it. And I felt like I could walk on water. That's how high I was. That's how that massive rush of adrenaline. And then when I got my hands on the bar and I closed my eyes, that's when I was like, my mind just went into a different dimension almost. I wasn't Eddie Hall lifting that weight in the arena. I was Eddie Hall in a different place, you know, in this scenario. And I closed my eyes, and if you watch the footage of me lifting, my eyes are shut, and then halfway up they just open, and I can't see anything. But you look into my eyes and tell me they didn't change colour. You tell me that, because they fucking do. And then I stand up, and then I sort of finish the lift, and it's like, ding, like back in the room. And it's just like, fucking hell. Like, it was literally an out-of-body experience. You sort of like, yeah, I wasn't in the arena, my head was somewhere else. And then when I completed the lift, it was like, back in the room. It was quite surreal, and it's quite hard for people to comprehend, but this is the scenario I had to do.
Yeah. What's the most amount of food you've eaten in a day?
I did a 20,000 calorie day once, and I'll never do it again.
How do you get 20,000 calories in a day?
Disgustingly. Disgustingly.
Please explicitly explain it.
Spent the whole night shitting myself, throwing up, shitting through the eye of a needle. Never again. I learnt my lesson. Like, the human body can only take so much.
And you wouldn't have lifted that weight if you hadn't have gone to that place. You'd have lifted 460, 465. Do you think?
Probably not on that day. I think I was strong enough to lift 500 kilo.
Yeah.
That day, you know, bear in mind, I was nowhere near my peak in 2016. I think it was the mind that lifted that weight for me rather than the body. But then a year later, 2017, I do feel as though I had peaked and my strength. You know, I remember I lifted 470 kilo in the final of World's Strongest Man after 12 events, and I stood up a bit quicker than you could stand up out of a chair. And they asked me after the lift, like, Ed, you're on fire, mate. Like, what do you think you could lift right now? And I was like, 520, maybe a bit more.
Yeah.
Like, I just felt I was the strongest man on the planet, and I felt it. You know, again, I was sort of walking around that arena, and I felt like I was walking on water. You know, I felt horrible to say, but I just felt above everyone in terms of strength.
Yeah.
I just felt like in another world.
Did that lift not nearly kill you? I saw the documentary where it was really hard for you to breathe, and you had a compression, didn't you, in your spine?
Yeah. So blacked out. So I did the lift, got the down call, stood there, enjoyed it for a bit. And then when I released, it was like that massive dump of blood just gets flushed all over the place. So I managed to unhook a hand and then just went. I was convulsing, so it was like in and out of consciousness. So have you ever happened to you?
No, I watched it, but yeah.
So it's happened to me once or twice, and you sometimes get it. When you get lightheaded.
Yeah.
So if you go lightheaded and don't go to the floor, what will happen is you convulse, so you come in and out of consciousness, and that's your body's way of telling you to lie down to get the blood back to your head.
Oh,
sort
wow.
of thing.
Right.
So I was in and out of consciousness, sort of convulsing all around, and then it took me I don't know, a minute to sort of like compose myself, get my breath. Blood was just fucking everywhere. And then did a little speech to the crowd, and then backstage just suffered the consequences, and they were bad. You know, I had just the pressure here was insane, all behind my eyes, behind my ears. I had what they call arc eye. So if you're like, I was welding in the past, so you get like, if you weld somewhere and look at it, and then you look somewhere else, you're blind in that spot. So I had arc eye where wherever I looked, I was sort of blind in the middle of my vision. I could see the outside, but not the middle. So that was quite scary. Blood pressure was unreadable. It was well over the 200s. Heart rate was in the 200s as well. Just everything was just through the roof, and it was just had such a surge of adrenaline that my body just couldn't, it couldn't deal with it basically. So afterwards, it was just a horrible sort of traumatic sort of 20 minutes or so, just getting me to calm down, get me adrenaline back down, and get my blood pressure and heart rate back down. And it was a very worrying time because with all the blood that came out, I was proper like, has something popped, has something gone wrong? Because there's been instances where strength athletes have actually like burst aortic valves and blood's come up from the mouth and all sorts of shit. So I had some bad feelings, it's quite traumatic, but pulled through.
Is all that shit worth it?
People always say, if you could go back and do it again, what would you? And I'm like, yeah, but I'd probably add 10 kilo on. So, I definitely would go back and do it again. But I wouldn't take anything back. That's for sure. I wouldn't take anything back. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And it all pans out in the end.
And why, you said you were peaked at 2017. Why was that your peak year?
I believe I just got everything right. I got the recovery right, I got the diet right, I got the training right. I was working with blood doctors. So I got all my markers in the perfect performance ranges. Everything was just popping. Everything just felt good. And I just felt the strongest and fittest I'd ever been in my life. And I was 196 kilo.
And what are you now?
About 170. So I've lost quite a bit, but 196 kilo is 31 and a half stone in English terms, 433 pounds for you Americans. So I was, literally one of the biggest human beings on the planet.
Day to day, what's it like carrying that weight around?
Horrendous.
Yeah.
You can't, just little things like putting your socks on.
Can't.
You can't. You just fucking can't. It's imagine I was cepheric. Everything was just ballooned and all that water retention.
Yeah.
It's like getting a sock on would take me 5 minutes. Get the other sock on about. Just walking about. And I think the most stressful of it all was the health implications. I say I was the strongest and fittest and wherever I ever was, but I was also on the limit of everything. Every time I went to my doctor, it was like, it was like your kidney markers are even higher, your liver markers are up, your hemoglobin's up. He used to look me up and down and be like, Ed, like you need to fuck off now. You need to cut back. Like you're this close to dying. At any point, any of your organs could fail.
Wow.
He put things in perspective for me, and this was about 5 weeks before World's Strongest Man. I failed an ECG. So the medical to get to compete at World's Strongest Man. I failed the ECG. And they wouldn't let me compete. So the only way they could let me compete is if I did a full echogram, a full scan on the heart, make sure all the valves are working and functioning, there's no weaknesses and all that kind of thing. So I did that. And everything was fine. But the doctor said to me, he said, just you've got to think about this from a health perspective. Like, you look at your body weight, you look at your body mass index and your hemoglobins and your liver and kidney markers, put you in a chart and compare you to the rest of the country. Like, an overweight guy is probably 130 kilo, 22 stone. That's an overweight guy. I was closer to 32. So, he says, like, he showed me this chart. He's like, right, these people, about 22 stone, 23 stone, these people are like 50% more likely to have a heart attack or a stroke than the people weighing 13, 14 stone. So here's the chart. The normal people here, guys that are 22 stone here, you're here. He's like, you think about it, you're the most statistically highest risk person to have a heart attack or stroke right now. So how long do you want to do this for? How long can your body cope with this? And that was hard to take, because like 5 weeks before World's Strongest Man, he was literally saying to me, Ed, like, I'm telling you now, you tomorrow to right now, you could walk out of here and have a heart attack or stroke. So I had to walk away and ignore that advice and just be like, this is it. This is my last one. My body can't take anymore. I'm taking years and years and years off my life. So yeah, that World's Strongest Man was the be all or end all. It was either win it or don't win it. That was it.
Do you think that maybe helped you win it? Because that was that.
I think in a way it did. I think all the heart scans and the doctors looking over me top to bottom, they couldn't really understand it. We did all the tests. They couldn't find anything wrong. And I think that was a massive help in the end, because for years I had people telling me, you're going to die, you're at massive risk, blah, 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 blah. But when I did the tests, that's when I started ignoring what they said. And I was like, I'm actually probably something a bit special here. We did studies with Staffordshire University, and we measured the functionality of my heart. A normal person's heart pumps between 4 and 7 litres of blood per minute. Mine was measured at pumping at 17 litres of blood per minute.
Wow.
So if you think about that, my heart is four times more efficient than anyone else's. It's no bigger, a little bit enlarged, no bigger than everyone else's, but I was pumping 4 times as much blood as anyone else. And that's when it hit me. I was like, maybe I'm just built for it. Maybe there's something in me, like some gene.
Yeah.
that I'm just made for this, and that was later proved that it was.
Yeah. Was there ever a come down after the world record deadlift, after Strongest Man? Did you ever have a career come down?
The deadlift, no, because I had so much more to look forward to. You know, I started to win World's Strongest Man at that point. So once I did the deadlift, I was back in the gym. I think 2 weeks later, you know, I was back at it. Competed at World's Strongest Man like 3 weeks after that. So that, no. World's Strongest Man. When I won the World's Strongest Man, I had this huge euphoria, like the best feeling I'd ever felt in my life. You know, literally on top of the planet, standing on top of that plinth with a big gold trophy. Exactly.
Yeah.
The world's strongest man.
Yeah.
You know, the strongest man on the planet. Proven. No one can take that away. That was a real defining euphoric moment in my life. But it was also probably one of the worst in the following days, because it's been well documented with gold Olympic medalists and world champions that once you've been at the top, you've experienced that huge euphoria, that amazing feeling of well-being. There's only one way to go, and that's down. And that's a horrible, horrible feeling of coming back down to reality and going home and, you know, getting back to normal life. You know, just won the world's strongest man, and then 2 days later I'm changing my son's nappy. You know, I'm putting the dishes away, I'm, you know, going back to work and earning money again. And that's a hard thing to take. It really is, because you think you just win that gold medal, and you think, like, you spend so many years chasing it, you think that's going to solve all your problems, and you get it, and it's like, fuck, what now? And it's hard. You know, that really did put me in a massive bit of depression, really, after I won the world's strongest man. So even though I'd achieved my life goals and achieved everything I wanted, and I got up every morning and I looked in the mirror and I felt content. You know, I was happy in what I'd achieved, but what's next? You know, it was tough, really tough.
Is that why, do you think, you keep setting yourself these challenges, which, like your boxing challenge and now your bodybuilding challenge, probably out of your comfort zones?
Yes.
Do you think that's why you do those things? Or is it good for marketing as well?
All three. All three. I think, again, it comes back to the void filling. It comes back to, you know, that 10-year strongman career was such a great void filler. It kept, you know, even though it sometimes was unhappy with my work and whatever else, it kept me busy, kept me moving forward, it kept me focused. After that, that was some of the toughest times in my life, because I had no focus, I had no goals. I was just doing endorsements, I was doing evening webs, doing touring the country, I was doing TV shows, keeping myself busy, but no actual purpose or focus. And yeah, when the boxing came along, it was a focus point. It was something to fill that void. And then, you know, I've had some time off after that, and now it's bodybuilding. You know, again, something to fill that void. After this, I don't know what else there is left I can do. But for me, I think it has to be physical. It has to be physically demanding for me to fill that void. You know, expend that energy and get that sense of euphoria on a daily basis.
What's it like from the wife's point of view? What's it like being married to the world's strongest man? You, not just you, but all, you know, your competitors you must know. It must be hard to be married to the world's strongest man. What's that like?
I would say it's very hard. I'd say it gets played down a lot by a lot of people. I think people don't appreciate what goes into it. What is sacrificed. I think it's a lot of sacrifice. In my 10-year strongman career, the last 5 years, I didn't have last 7 years, sorry, I didn't have a holiday for the last 7 years. So from 2010 was my last holiday. And because I was that career focused on being the world's strongest man, I didn't have any breaks. Birthdays, Christmases, you know, evenings out, going out with friends, all ruined because I was so focused on my training and so focused on you know, like getting the right food in or doing the recovery. For that period as well, I'm very distant and disconnected from my wife and kids. You know, spent no time with them at all. It'd be pushing it if I said I spent an hour or 2 hours a week with them. I think that'd be a stretch. You know, because every living, waking moment was either working to make money or strongman or traveling for strongman or eating or recovering or competing. It was hell on earth. And I think it's not till afterwards you look back and you think, fucking hell, that's a hell of a sacrifice from a wife's perspective. You know, she did everything. She cooked, she cleaned, she looked after the kids, she did the laundry, she did all my meals, you know, and the most important thing is she let me do all that. She let me go travel the world and compete and be away for weekends, traveling and doing shows, and every day out the house, sort of 10 hours a day, not getting in till 10 o'clock at night, and then jumping in my hyperright chamber. You know, it was a massive sacrifice. She didn't have a husband. She didn't have one. She supported, and I suppose she, like myself, saw the bigger goal.
That must be such a hard thing to face, because on the one hand, you had to do that to be the world's strongest man. On the other hand, all those hours you've lost with your children and your wife, how do you go to that place? Do you know you're making that sacrifice at the time, or is it only after that you're like...
I think you know it at the time. I think, you know, you know, watching my daughter grow up, watching my son grow up, and just for that, you know, little bit of time you spend with them every so often, you'd be like, oh, fuck me, and I've got an hour with them today, and then it's back to the grind for another 6 hours, 6 days, 23 hours. It was just, it played in my mind a lot that I was making everyone around me sacrifice, not just me. You know, my wife was miserable at times. You know, I wouldn't see her for weeks on end. And I felt miserable because I was missing time with my kids, and I felt really guilty because of that. But then I sort of had to tell myself that it's got to be worth. You know, you've got to make sacrifices in life to be the best, to get out what you want. And I guess I always knew in the back of my head that one day it would come right. You know, one day all that sacrifice, all that time that you've spent supporting me would be paid back. And it's been, and I've proven that right. You know, I've sort of found a good balance now between work and family life and, you know, socializing and whatever else. And I feel like I broke the mold of, if I was still working a full-time job Monday to Saturday, doing 12-hour days and working the doors, I'd still be struggling to pay my mortgage, struggling to put food on the table, and I'd still probably spend half as much time as I would with my wife and kids now. So I've got a lot, you know, I've set myself up and a lot to look forward to with my wife and kids. You know, we can have those holidays, you know. I mean, most days, you know, I only do sort of 2 or 3 days work a week at the minute. Obviously, I'm working every day in essence, you know, I'm always on the phone, always emailing and setting things up and everything. But now, I train with my son every day.
And he's 10?
Yeah.
And he does weights?
He does.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
that must feel great.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Train here?
Yeah. Well, train here or another gym.
Yeah.
So, you know, I pick my son up from school every day and we go...
Ever picked him up in the tank?
I have. Yeah, I have. Yeah.
What did he, cool. Was that a surprise? Did you tell him?
It was a surprise, no, so I didn't tell him I bought a tank. And I just picked him up from school one day and he was like, what the fuck, Dad? It's like, you've gone too far. It's like, wait, and I didn't tell my wife either.
Well, of course, yeah.
So I just rocked up one day with a tank and she was just like, what the fuck is this? But yeah, just stuff like that, you know, and that's what makes me happy, is all that sacrifice I made is now I can sort of repay that in ways of no other parent could, in a way. You know, I can pick my son up in a tank every day from school. I can, you know, take him to the gym, go and train for 2 hours. We can go and hang out. We can play PlayStation, whatever else. And, you know, the weekends we can go and do whatever we want. So life's really flipped it on its head. You know, it's gone from all that sacrifice to, you know, repaying myself.
Yeah.
Because I sacrificed as well, and repaying them for their sacrifice.
Really random one. What's the most amount of food you've eaten in a day?
Oh God. The most I've ever done, I did a 20,000 calorie day once, and I'll never do it again.
How do you get 20,000 calories in a day?
Disgustingly. Disgustingly.
Please
bad food.
explicitly explain it.
So, I mean, I would usually consume 12.5 to 15,000 calories a day anyway. When I was at my peak, that would be like a normal day for me.
You mean training for World's Strongest Man?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there were days where, it'd be like a Sunday, you'd have a day of recovery, so you'd be like, right, I'm going to pile the calories in now to help that recovery process.
Yeah.
To, you know, to help you train harder for the week coming. So I had ways of getting the calories in. So at some points when I was in a real big bulking season, I'd have a litre of ice cream after every single meal. And then they were big meals. So that'd be, so I'd have a full English breakfast, a litre of ice cream. You know, and then snacks in between. Lunch would be a half a kilo of steak, rice, pasta, vegetables, a litre of ice cream. And then all snacks and meals up until dinner time. And then again, you know, a massive chicken curry, bolognese with like a kilo of pasta, and then a litre of ice cream. And it was just a way of piling the calories in.
Yeah.
Not the healthiest, by all means. And this is what I mean why I didn't put, you know, my heart and soul into the food. But it had a purpose. Yeah, and there was one day where I thought, right, I'm going to eat exactly that, but I'm going to top it up with another 5,000 calories. So I bought a litre of double cream.
Oh, no.
And all throughout the day, just sipping it. Just in between, just like every so often, just have a gulp. And by the end of the day, this litre of double cream had gone. Fuck me, the worst day of my fucking life. Spent the whole night shitting myself, throwing up, shitting through the eye of a needle. Never again. I learnt my lesson. So yeah, I think sometimes, like the human body can only take so much.
Yeah.
I found my limit that day.
Right, and you'd never do that again?
No.
What about for 100 grand?
I mean, yeah, everyone's got a price.
Yeah, we always talk about
Everyone's got a price. Yeah.
Shit. Eddie, do you think the world needs more strong men? You know, society's it's changing a lot. There's seems to be a bit of an attack on masculinity. Mm-hmm. There's this thing called toxic masculinity. I guess people would look at you and say you are, you know, the quintessential strong male. Does the world need more strong men?
I feel like it needs a good mix of everything, but I do feel like I feel like we need to learn from history, and I feel like that having strong men in the world is a big thing for the younger generation to look up to, you know, to the world's strongest men, to the UFC champions, to the world boxing champions. You know, we need these people in our lives as much as we need anybody else. I think you're completely right. There's a lot of toxicity out there at the minute, and I think it's down to the parents above anyone to teach the kids what's right and wrong. So, but me myself, I like to teach my son, you know, to be equal, to listen, to be understanding, never judge, and you know. But then you've also got, you know, you want to be a man that, in my opinion, if you're not a man that's pushed your limits, like to know what the human body can do, I think that's a real shame. And if you can't do that, then I think it's good to see other people do that. You know, what can the human body do? How big and strong can the human body get? How fast, how agile, how mobile, how explosive? And I think those things are quite inspirational for the younger generation. So I quite enjoy. It's like my son comes with me to the gym every day and we lift weights and we chat amongst the guys, you know, and we talk about proper lad stuff, and he just joins in. You know, we'll talk about women and and things going on in the world, and you know, Andrew Tate, and we'll just talk about these things. And I think that's really valuable for my son to just be there, listen, and see how we react and what our opinions are, and in between that, you know, we're lifting weights and drinking protein shakes. You know, so I think I'm you know, that's my way of bringing my child up.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, you know, just teach kids of today a variety of everything. Everyone's got the place.
So you mentioned Andrew Tate, had him on the show, know him quite well. And he's this really interesting character and caricature, in that he's almost this symbol of strong masculinity, but then there's a misogyny on the other side of it as well, where maybe you stepped over the line. What are your thoughts on Andrew Tate and his impact on society? I
mean, as you say, he's a character. He's a caricature, but it's a touchy one, isn't it, at the minute? I think some of the things he's done and said have been quite wrong in terms of teaching the younger generation to act a certain way towards women and homosexuals and whatever else. I think some of those things have been a bit wrong. Whether they are his true personality or not, I think they're just wrong in general. But I think Andrew Tate himself seems like a man that a lot of people could look up to in certain ways. You know, he's a man who's come from nothing. He's a man who's fought his way up, literally fought his way up, and made a decent life for himself. As I say, I don't want to dive into all the things that he could have done wrong or has done wrong, but you know, everyone's got their portrayal of themselves. I myself, you know, on social media, I'm the beast. You know, I'm not Eddie Hall, I'm the beast. So I've got a different personality, you know, and I'm a bit obnoxious and I'm a bit arrogant and whatever else when I'm on the stage and when I'm on camera. But in true essence, you know, I'm a family man. I've got a wife, I've got kids, I've got a kid on the way. You know, I've got a mum and dad, I've got brothers and sisters, I've got nieces. You know, I'm a normal person. I like to go out and have a beer. You know, I like to hang around with my pals. I like to play the PlayStation. So I think there's two sides to everybody.
So with all this stuff around sort of gender now, and you know, the blurred lines of gender, do you think maybe that it's harder to be a boy growing up to be a man? Is it more confusing? Is this why Andrew Tate is so popular with young men? Because like, this is what it takes to be a man. I mean, I'll just be honest, Eddie, if I was growing up and I was confused anyway at 14, I'd be fucking confused in today's world.
Yeah. Again, a very touchy one. I've got to be careful what I answer here, but
I think it's an important discussion to have.
It is, of course. I think I'm of the opinion that men are men and women are women. End of story. Like, if people want to be someone else or something else, let them crack on. Like, I've got no problem with that whatsoever. But like, I wouldn't push my masculinity on somebody else. Don't push your opinions on anybody else either. You know, if you want to dress as a woman and say you're a woman and whatever else, that's fine. Carry on, crack on. Just don't bother me when you do it. You know what I mean? And that's my opinion with that kind of thing. Obviously, celebrate who you are, do what you do, but I think let people make their own decisions, and trying to force that on people and make people learn your ways and whatever, that's bullshit. Well, I wouldn't force myself to force a kid to, like, you've got to be this, you've got to act like this, like bollocks. Like that's your parents' job, not mine. You know, that's how it should be.
One of the most controversial things Andrew Tate said, I think, is he said that depression isn't real. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's again, that's a very obnoxious thing to say. I think it's quite an easy thing to say from an outside perspective, and I've heard, in his defence, I've heard people say that, you know, in different aspects. When I was younger, when I got diagnosed with anxiety and depression, my nan, the most sweet-hearted, giving, generous woman on the planet to me, sort of sat me down one day and like, what's up with you? What's there to be depressed about? Just snap out of it. And I don't think, you know, because she'd never been through it, she didn't quite get it and understand it, and I think unless you have been through it and you do understand what it does to you and what it takes, then it'd be quite easy for someone from the outside just to say, it's not real, come on. Like, bullshit, you're not depressed, just just pick yourself up and let's go for a pint. You know, it doesn't work like that. So I think that's quite, it's quite an obnoxious thing to say in some ways. But everyone's got their opinion. And again, like, do I judge him for having that opinion? Couldn't give a shit. Let him crack on. If he thinks that's the case, then does that affect me in any way? No, it doesn't.
Was your nan a big part of your life?
My nan was a massive part of my life, yeah. She, someone that would, you know, was a very, like we said, you know, very ADHD, just bouncing off the walls, very disobedient. Just if there's something they shouldn't be doing, you know, I'd do it. Something you shouldn't say, I'd say it. And my nan, even though, you know, just a sweet old lady, had no physical power over me, but just with a few words would calm me down and make me see sense. And I think that's a very powerful thing to have as a child, as someone that has that power over you, that you have that respect for. And they you know, she taught me a lot in my life. She taught me how to care and be kind and to not judge and, you know, give people the time and patience, because she did that with me. And I was a terror child, and she still had all those things for me. So that taught me a lot. That did. It taught me a lot with my son now. You know, how to be with my son. You know, there's at times where I'm like, oh Jesus Christ, like I could clip you around the ear right now. Yeah. But it's my nan, all those lessons from my nan. That's, you know, sometimes a good firm talking to does a lot more sinking in than a clip around the ear would.
Should we do a quick fire round? We like doing quick fire rounds.
Yeah,
about 30-second answers. I mean, you can do as much as you like, but
okay.
Why do you have a tank?
So I guess I've recently become acquainted with the world of YouTube and Facebook and TikTok and everything else, and I realised what a great income it is. And whilst I was doing some brainstorming one day, I just came up with the idea. I was like, wouldn't it be fucking great if I just bought a tank, like a road legal tank, and just drove around in it and did stupid things like go through a car wash and take it to McDonald's and pick my son up from school. I was like, that would make me a lot of money. So I bought it, and it's made me a footload of money. So it was a good decision. Yeah. My wife was better. As I say, I just bought it one day, didn't tell anyone. And my wife just like nearly ripped my face off. And I was just like, trust me, I can guarantee in 3 months' time you'll be telling me the best move I ever made. And 3 months on, she was like, yeah, you're right. Okay.
I love it. Would you rather have 1 million cash here now or 1 million engaged extra followers on social media, and why?
Oh, I mean, me personally, I'd go for the cash, because I could use that money to pay for the followers.
I bet you could make
more.
more.
Lots of change left over.
Yeah. I bet you could probably make more than 1 million out of 1 million followers, though, couldn't you?
I mean, yeah. I mean, the social platforms I've got in place, I know the value of 1 million followers, and that would probably earn you 1 million in the long run. Yeah. But 1 million cash would. There's a big difference between 1 million in a business bank account, as opposed to 1 million in your hand. That's a big.
That's true.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, it's 50% more.
Yeah.
For 1 million, would you eat 27,000 calories in a day?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
That's got to be one of your next videos.
Yeah. I ate 27,000 calories for £1 million.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I did say I was financing it. What's the hardest thing you've ever had to overcome in your life?
I would say one of the hardest things I've ever had to overcome, and there's been many. I would say with the boxing fight that I just had with Thor, sort of 18 months into the prep, I detached my left bicep. I've got the scar there, rolled my bicep up. So
while you were doing a curl?
Whilst I was doing a hook. Just a silly wide hook, just a one-off mistake, and it rolled my bicep up. And I had to go and get the surgery awake, because I couldn't get put to sleep because of my size. So I had to have it done. They just put a band around my arm, numb my arm, and they just did the operation whilst I was awake.
Did you look?
I did. Yeah,
Did you regret looking?
I did. I filmed it. It's on my YouTube.
Millions of views.
Yeah. And the comeback from that, like, so the surgeon said to me, you can't throw a punch for a year. Like, you can box, you can throw jabs and whatever else, but if you throw a hard hook within this side of 9 months, it'll just come off again. So I basically had to go into that fight 6 months after the operation and fight Thor one-armed.
Was it your lead jab or was it your...
Yeah, I was I'm right-handed, so you always fight with your left hand.
You need that jab.
So, I mean, it put a massive disadvantage to me, and quite, you know, people around me are like, Ed, do you want to postpone this? Do you want to extend it? And I was like, I can't. I'd already delayed it once. I'd already missed a fight. So there was so much pressure on me to go and do that fight that I just dealt with it. And that was such a hard thing mentally to overcome. You know, I had to sort of convince myself it was okay that I'm going to beat this guy with one arm, and I did in the end. But to get to that point, you've got to think 6 months. So I had the arm attached, and then 6 months later I had to fight. You've got to think 3.5, 4 months of that, it was still healing. So I couldn't even throw a jab, you know, and then 2 months I just started to use my arm. So that was probably one of the hardest things I've had to overcome in my whole life and career. It was so, mentally, more than anything, to come back from that and step in the ring with literally one of the biggest men on the planet with one arm was very mentally taxing.
Yeah. So we're going to come back to the quickfire round in a moment, because I want to go to Thor. Because I look at everything online in the media, and I always then go, well, this might not be true, because that's media. So I always like to ask my guests themselves, did they actually say this? So did you say there's more chance of a dinner date with King Charles than fixing your friendship with Thor?
I did say that, yeah. I did say that.
And do you still feel that way?
Yeah, I do. You know, there's so much water under the bridge, so to say. Once too much is gone, that bridge gets, you know, pulled down. I mean, that happened a long time ago.
So would you say you hate him?
I don't hate him.
No.
I just don't want to be, you know, I can't see myself being friends with someone who tried to destroy my life in the past. So
what did he do to try and destroy your life?
He put a big black cloud over my 2017 win, said I cheated him, said me and a referee construed to take a title away from him. And that put a lot of like black cloud on me, a lot of depression, a lot of like added stress to my life. And it was just like one post I did on Instagram, but that one post like
blew up.
Yeah, it blew up. It blew up. Not a very nice thing to go through.
No. It feels sad, that, to me.
You know what, it is sad, because I got on with Thor. You know, I classed him as a friend. You know, been around my house, we'd had a party at my house, we travelled the world together, went for meals, you know, we competed many, many times. And that was all just thrown out the window with one Instagram post. Just gone, just like that. It is sad.
Yeah. It does sound like the makings of a good boxing rematch, though. I bet you can't confirm nor deny.
I cannot.
All right. What do you think of Jake Paul? I mean, he's sort of taken boxing a bit by storm, and it seems to be they either think, well, look, he's not a boxer, come on, or yeah, he's shaken boxing up in a good way. What do you think?
I think fair play to the lad. I think he's come on the scene. He might have been obnoxious. He might have been arrogant, but he's backed it up. And that's the most important thing. You can be as obnoxious and arrogant as you want, as long as you back it up. Look at Muhammad Ali. If Muhammad Ali hadn't have said those things and then come and delivered, would we class him as the greatest boxer of all time? Probably not.
No.
If he kept his mouth shut and just boxed, he'd just be another boxer. And I think that's what separates the great from the good.
Right.
Is backing yourself.
So the hype.
The hype.
It's part of
backing yourself is part of becoming a great. Jake Paul's backed himself and everyone's laughed and called him whatever names, but he's delivered. And you can't argue with that. He's delivered time and time again. And I think he's going up against Tommy Fury.
Yeah, we had him on the show, I think, last week before? Yeah, they just announced it.
So, you know, we're going up against Tommy Fury, and again, that's going to test him, you know.
Who's winning that fight?
I mean, I'd like to say Tommy, but I think just Jake Paul just keeps surprising people, you know.
Tommy thinks he's just a complete amateur.
he's probably right. He's probably right, but and he probably is. But he keeps landing them lucky shots, doesn't he? So you can't call. I mean, how many times has he won 4 fights now, Jake Paul, and everyone's 6. 6-0.
6-0.
And 4 of those have definitely been good opponents. You know, you can't call that luck at the end of the day. You know, he's doing something right. I think people want to play him down. I think people want to say he's an idiot, an amateur, and whatever else. But he's taking it serious. You know, he's got boxing coaches. He's got boxing rings at his fucking house. You know, you can't say the lad's not serious. He's fucking serious. He's eating, sleeping, and shitting boxing. And that puts a lot of professional boxers to shame, mate. Because I know a lot of professional boxers that are professional boxers, and they don't eat, sleep, and shit it. They'll do little bits here and there, and you know, half-arsed stuff. So he's putting the footwork in. So I can only commend him, really. I commend Tommy Fury as well. He's of the same. You know, he's putting the footwork in. I think they're both the same in terms of like what they're going to put into this fight. So it's going to be an interesting one. I'd like Tommy to win.
Yeah, we're Team Tommy because Jake was on the show. It was a bit rude.
Was he?
Yeah, very rude. But whatever, life's life. I don't care. Like you, I try not to judge.
Yeah.
But we preferred spending time with Tommy. Big risk for Tommy though. You know,
Massive.
I mean, his dad's basically said you can give up boxing here.
And you know what? Like sometimes people crumble under pressure, but I always say pressure creates diamonds. I perform very well under pressure. You know, the more pressure on me, the better I perform. The more people say I'm going to lose, the more people say you're not going to lift that 500 kilo deadlift, the more I'll perform. So, you know, some people thrive in it, some people do crumble. We'll see.
There's a lot of talk about him being on steroids, and it's not something I know much about, but for some reason, Joe Rogan is going wild publicly. The Rock is on steroids, The Rock is on steroids, The Rock is on steroids. He's just on about it all the time. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, I mean, you know, I've been to America and I know what goes on in terms of the world, the medical world, so to say. I would believe that The Rock would be on TRT, which is testosterone replacement therapy. And that is a very good thing to do. It's actually very good for you, very healthy for you, helps you be big and strong, helps you live a long and prosperous life. So I don't know, can you attack someone for bettering their life? I don't see how you can. You know, The Rock's doing it. The Rock is doing phenomenal in life. He's got the energy. He looks amazing. He performs amazing. And why should he stop doing TRT just because someone says it's wrong? I think Joe Rogan himself is on TRT.
Yeah, I understand he is. I don't know for sure, but I understand.
So it's a bit hypocritical to say he's on steroids when he's on steroids himself.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, maybe he wants to call him out to get him on his show. I don't know.
Probably, yeah. Just, you know.
Yeah. You said you know what goes on in that world, in the medical world over there. I have no idea what goes on.
Well, I mean, TRT, you know, in the UK, TRT is very frowned upon, but in the US, it's a medical thing. It's like if you get past 30 years of age.
I'm way past that.
There we go. Yeah. You get past 30 years of age, your testosterone starts depleting, and you start getting health problems. You start getting mental health problems. You start getting physical problems. You start wasting away. You know, you start getting erections. In America, if that thing's happened, right, let's get you on TRT, let's bring your life back up.
Right.
And, you know, and the fit, the strong, the healthy, they live longer, they perform better. It's a world that the UK is 20, 30 years behind.
So it's not just for bodybuilding as well?
It's for health.
Yeah.
It's for health. It's to help you to live a long and prosperous life. You know, it's to help you live into your 70s, 80s. It's to help you sleep better. It's to help you perform better. It's to help you, you know, get an erection and shag your wife. It's to help you do all these things.
Where do I buy it?
Yeah, exactly. But it's, you know, in the UK, I've got this opinion of it's so bad, it's corrupt, it's horrible, it's cheating, blah, blah, blah. But it's not.
No.
Right? When you look at it from a sensible point of view, as long as it's not abused, it's a very, very good and healthy thing to do for a male. Very good.
Right. Harry, we better check that out. So we have a mutual friend, and that is Martin Ford.
Yes.
I interviewed him on the show, became a friend after that. And I asked him, what should I ask Eddie? And he said this. He didn't actually give a question, but I just like this. I need to read it to you. He said, let's have a look. Right. Okay. Haha, I wish I could tell you all I know about Eddie, but there's a friend code, so fair play. And it would either get him cancelled or arrested. That's what he said. So, Eddie, what
Right back at you, Martin. Yeah. Right back at you.
Well, I don't want to break the friend code, so I'm going to ask you, but can you give us something that maybe you haven't talked about in an interview before, something about Eddie that most people don't know, or something that Martin might have on you in a brown envelope?
Ooh. There's nothing I can say to that really, without incriminating myself.
Well, that's not what we're here for.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, let me ask it another way then. Is there anything about you that's misunderstood in the public?
I think the perception of the Beast and Eddie Hall gets misunderstood a lot. I think.
Have you perpetuated that?
Yeah, probably.
Have you created the Beast?
It's my own doing.
Yeah.
But I think on the TV show you do come across as this animal. When I'm on stage and performing and on TV shows, you've got to be this cocky, arrogant guy who's above above everyone else and whatever. You've got to be that person to sort of to be that positive on camera sort of thing, and that can be misconstrued quite heavily, which can get quite upsetting. You get a lot of comments, so to say, that you read and you're like, fucking hell. Yeah, I'm at the point in my life where I'm just like, you don't really get offended anymore. There's been so much of it, just like, fucking hell, that's bad, whatever.
Yeah.
You don't really get bothered, but I think it's still that little bit hurtful that people do come on and sort of think that you are that person. You do these sketches, so to say. A bit like Andrew Tate. He's got two personalities, hasn't he? And he's been perceived as this one, and that people absolutely hate. When in reality, I bet if you meet him, he's pretty sound guy, I'd imagine.
Well, he was when I met him.
Well, there you go.
And that's not often said, but.
And I always say, you treat people for how they are with you. Like people say like Jake Paul. Like people say they hate him and whatever. He's disgusting. He's bad for boxing. He's a dick. He's this. No. Have you ever met him?
Yeah.
No, you haven't.
No.
There's Robbie Williams, the singer. So I've had a lot. He's from Stoke, so and he's been talked about in the past. And you mention him once or twice. There's a lot of positivities. Don't get me wrong, but you get quite a few people that are like, "Oh, he's a dickhead," and I go like, "Oh right, well, why is he a dickhead?" Well, he's just too big for Stoke, isn't he? He moved to LA. He thinks he's too fucking big time, and he's fucking done this and done that. And I'm like, all right. So
big for Stoke.
So I'm just like, all right. So you're just jealous then? And they're like, eh? I'm like, well, what's he done to you? He hasn't done anything to you. But you're calling him a dickhead and jealous, and saying he's too big for this. He hasn't done anything to you, mate. He's had a brilliant career. And he's moved out there, and he's got an amazing family. What's he done to you? I'm like, oh, when you put it like that, I suppose you're right. I'm like, oh, shut the fuck up. It's quite easy to be that person, isn't it? To throw hate on people. Personality, so to say. But when you meet them in person, like Robbie was so down to earth. Jason Statham is probably the best example I can give you. You'd think Jason Statham would be, I don't know, you get this perception, don't you? Like, wouldn't really have time for you.
Yeah.
But I met him on the set of Expendables 4. And he was the most down-to-earth bloke I'd ever met. Straight up to me, like, he fangirled on me. He proper fangirled on me. I was like, oh my God, Eddie Hall, it's like, you fucking deadlift, you're swimming, you're strong man. And we just talked for hours about just bollocks. and I walked away, I was like, fucking hell, like, what a nice bloke. Proper, down-to-earth, lovely bloke. And I don't know, I've never heard anything bad about Jason Statham myself. But I met him and I took him for what he is, and I can say to everyone he was an amazing bloke, down to earth, humble, funny, and that's how you got to take people these days.
Yeah, and you said you kind of got used to the hate now. So how do you, maybe a 30-second tip on just ignoring the hate and not letting it hurt you personally?
I think you've got to see what's important in life. Especially someone in my position, it doesn't matter what people's opinion of you. What's important to me is people around me. My family, my friends. That's it. That's it. I could look on social media. I could read 1,000 positive comments and probably 10 negative. But being the person we are, the people we are, we always focus in on the negative. And I always think to myself when I see those negative comments and people coming on and hating, what does it say? What does it really say about them? They've had to take time out of their day to come onto your profile page to say something hateful about you or toward you, what does that really say about their life? Usually it's the people that throw the hate that really hate their own lives. So I actually feel sorry for them in a little way. You know, just I hope that person turns their life around and turns all that negativity into positivity and lives a great life.
So if you could go back to the 13-year-old you, or a 13-year-old child struggling at school, just got suspended, getting bullied, teachers telling them there'll be nothing, what would you say to them?
Oh, well, I've been in that position. I was that
That's
person.
why I asked it.
Right. I mean, if I could go back in time, I would say keep being you, because there's so much pressure in the world to be a certain person, to do well at school, to get GCSEs, to go to college, to go to university, to get a decent job, to get a house, to pay your bills and to have a family. There's so much pressure on kids these days, and there's no one there to say, you know what, mate, like, fuck everybody else, you just concentrate on you. There's no one there to say that. Everyone's there to tell you how shit you are and how worthless you are and how you're going to amount to nothing. That's what they're there to do at school, in my opinion, these days. They're just there. If you're an outcast, if you've got ADHD and bouncing off the walls, they want you out. They want you fucking gone. Well, if you're that person in the world right now, just enjoy your life, be yourself, find your fix, and you'll be just fine.
Amen.
Amen.
What's your biggest regret in life?
Ooh. I don't really have regrets.
But something popped into your head because you
did.
chuckled there. Go on.
It did.
Go
So
on,
the
Eddie.
only regret I have, it's in strongman. So the only regret I have is I said I was going to break the world record log press above the head, and I nearly did it. Got it above my head, but I had a bad ankle at the time, so it let me go. And instead of coming back 2 weeks later and doing it again, I quit. I just backed away. I just had to, redeem my health and get back to normality. And still to this day, it itches me. It fucking burns me. I wish I'd have just, 2 weeks later, done something or went to an event or something and just did that. Did that fucking world record log press. But there you go.
So this show is called Disruptors. What does that word disruptive mean to you?
Disruptive. Oh God, people out of the ordinary, people that do things on their own, in their own way, in their own path, people that don't give a fuck about authority, people that have proved people wrong. What does that word mean to you?
Well, this is what the show is called.
Okay.
So it means being a rebel with a cause.
Okay.
It means observe the masses, do the opposite.
Yeah.
But I love what you said. I do see you as a true disruptor. You wouldn't know this, and I don't want to too much fangirl on you, but we've been trying to get you on this show since 1922.
All right, okay.
Because I really think you are a disruptor.
Oh, thank you.
And so I'm really pleased that we've done it, and hopefully you've enjoyed the show.
Yeah, no, I have.
So can I ask one final, purely selfish question?
Yeah.
Like, this is not for the listeners, this is for me.
Yeah.
This is random, because I'm not Jake Paul, I'm not Eddie Hall, I'm me. But someone called me out for a fight live on a podcast.
Right.
And I just thought, I want to knock him out, so I'm going to do it. So I bet him 50 grand there and then, because I thought he'd wriggle.
Yeah.
And he's taken it. And he's 35 kilos heavier than me.
Yeah.
And it's happening on July the 1st.
Wow.
So can you give me a couple of little tips?
Well, what's his name first?
His name's Samuel Leeds.
Right.
So he's, I have a property training company.
Yeah.
It's the biggest one in the UK.
Right.
He thinks he's got the biggest one in the UK, which he hasn't, because I have.
'cause you have, yeah.
Which is half the reason why he wants to do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think he just wants to, punch above his weight a bit and sort me out, which he's not going to do. Yeah, so we're calling it Clash of the Property Titans.
Okay.
It's on July the 1st. And I'm serious about this. So any tips on training? You've had a fight like that?
Yeah, well, just don't detach your bicep. That'd be the number one rule of thumb. Seek help.
Yeah, good training, you mean?
Good training. You need a coach. You
Yeah.
need someone that's going to eat, sleep, and shit boxing with you.
Yeah.
And don't take it half-arsed.
No.
You know, give it everything you've got. Because if you start giving yourself excuses, as in, oh, I can't train today because I've got to make this property deal.
Or I'm going to see Eddie Hall. Or
Yeah. You've got to
Yeah.
write a program down and you've got to fucking stick to it. The second you start missing meals or missing training sessions or missing physio, that's when you're lying on the deck looking up at the ceiling thinking, fuck, if only I did this, if only I did that. And that's a man with excuses. Do not be a man with excuses.
Amen.
Amen.
Eddie, this has been great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your time, man.
Wow, what did you think about that? Honestly, on the way back, I felt like that was one of the best interviews we have ever done on the show. I would love your thoughts. Let me know what you think about Eddie Hall and this interview in the comments now. I would love to grow this channel as big as Eddie Hall's biceps. If you want me to get heavyweight guests on this show, like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn the notification bell on. And if you don't risk anything, you risk everything.